and was fighting in Burma, and so therefore had very close links to the British Empire then, and the Raj as it was. My father was in England and arrived here in 1968, and started working in sort of the factories, the cotton factories, and the cloth industry that is very close to Bradford, Huddersfield, the Pennines, really, where most of that sort of manufacturing was happening. And my grandfather had come prior to that, and had arrived and then invited his children along to work here. So when my father came, he wasn't, it left uh, studies, so he wasn't very highly educated actually, and he enjoyed going to school, but he kind of left school and came here just to start working and make ends meet and have a better future for himself, and ultimately for me and my siblings, because although I was born in Pakistan, my other three brothers were born in the United Kingdom, and undoubtedly have a much better life economically, and from a standard of living point of view. And of course, as we can see, sadly, from what's happening in places like Afghanistan, from the point of view of expressions of freedom and what you want to say, and how you feel about things, and having a society which may not agree with you but accepts that you are able to say what you want to say. So in a way, I'm one of the lucky people, I suppose. That's somewhere where I can say what I want to say. My mother and father both wanted me to be educated because they were not, and it was their aspiration to ensure that I kind of bettered them in a way. So I was at libraries every weekend whilst other kids were playing out, and I absolutely hated them for it, at that time, because I thought to myself, all my friends are out playing on the bikes, and I'm stuck in a library every Saturday, and they'd drop me off and they'd make sure that I was there from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. But that actually created a real love for literature for me, a real love for books, a real love for stories, a real love for learning. And I then later on in life became a teacher, and I became a teacher of English literature and drama, and then moved on from there, and kind of rose through the ranks and became a head teacher of a number of high schools, and finally an inspector for Ofsted, and then an executive head and a consultant for other schools, or failing schools, or schools that in special measures, or schools that required some additional support, and that was my life then. And then about 4 years ago, well, actually just over 6 years ago, I was helping and supporting a community organization in setting up local radio stations in just for a month. These radio stations are called RSLs, Restricted Service License radio stations. So they pop up stations that pop up for a month or so for special occasions. So it might be something like Ramadan, where there is a broadcast happening, or it might be some other cultural event. And I would always support people, because the people that were running these stations were not IT literate, and didn't really know how to set things up. And I was the one that was brought in and asked, "Oh, do you mind just doing this? Do you mind doing that?" And I would, uh, but it was an absolute nightmare for a month, because I would then be on 24-hour call for a whole month, helping out whenever there would be an issue. About 7 years ago, just under 7 years ago, an opportunity came up in Kirklees, Huddersfield area, um, where there was an opportunity to apply for a radio license on a permanent basis, on a community radio license. And the group asked if I would fill in the application form. I'm not going to pretend it was an absolute nightmare. It was almost like I was doing a dissertation again for my degree somewhere. It was 10,000 words. And it took me 3 months to write because I had to do lots of research on technical things that I was not familiar with. And the application was being competed against 6 other organizations. Fortunately, we were awarded the application. And I went to the group and I said, "Congratulations, here you go. Here's the application. You've received it. Well done. Go for it." And they said, "Yes, that's fine, but who's going to run it?" I went, "Well, you guys." And they just looked at me and they said, "Well, we don't know what a compliance officer is. What does that mean?" And so they asked me if I would take 2 years out of my actual job and volunteer and become the chief executive of this radio station and help them set it up and get the foundations down. 6.5 years on, I'm still there as the chief executive. I've tried to get out many times. Uh, but I've been reeled back in and asked if I would continue to support. The station has grown significantly. It's become more of a regional station and can now be heard in places like Glasgow, Cambridge, the whole of Greater Manchester, Birmingham, and is about to launch in Edinburgh, Cardiff, Bristol, Sheffield, and Rotherham this year, and next year it will launch in Leicester and Coventry. So it has gone from strength to strength. It's a very much loved station. It's a community station, so everything that happens on it has a real community focus. And the station is called Sangam, which means together, and our parent organization is called Communities Together. Just by coincidence, it resides on a road called Milne Road, and the word Milne in Urdu also means together. And our service providers for our internet are called Heart Internet, and that's just by coincidence. And our tagline for the station is Dilon ko milane wala, which translated means bringing hearts together. So all of these things, just by coincidence, kind of fitted and felt right. And I still do a little bit of teaching and education when required or support, but not that much. I still do a few inspections up and down the country when I'm required to do so. But my full-time job is the chief executive of the radio station and its associated organizations. It has a record label. It also has an educational section where it supports the education of young people for free, where they're struggling in schools. It also has a domestic abuse support helpline, which is run in confidence. It has an LGBTQ plus arm to it, which it runs in secret. To be honest, it's not advertised, but people know about it and seek support for that. It also has Sangam TV, which is an online TV station. So it's a very busy environment, and I have a group of 52 volunteers that help and support me in running the organization. I came across South Asian Heritage Month a couple of years ago, and Manchester was doing something about it just before the pandemic, and I thought, oh, isn't this wonderful? Because we've got close to 4 million people that have some links to South Asia, possibly more when you include all the other countries like Sri Lanka and Nepal and Maldives. Um, and I thought these people haven't really got a point in the year where their heritage is celebrated and their heritage is recognized. And there's so much to give through the arts, through culture, through music, through dance, through performance. And there wasn't much going on. And I thought, let's do something about it. And I spoke to a few of my colleagues, and they said, "Well, yes, that's fine. Let's carry on." And I said, "Well, I want to do something really special, and we've got 1 month, and I want to do 100 events in that 1 month." And they said, "Yes, okay." We did the final event last night, and I'm, you know, absolutely exhausted by it, to be honest. But it's been a bit of an uphill struggle, but I'm really, really glad that we did, because people have come to recognize, especially people that belong to South Asian heritage themselves, they've come to realize how much there is out there that they have also contributed to the United Kingdom, but how much they have brought, um, culturally and from an artistic point of view, uh, to to Britain, and how much they've become integrated into society, and people have taken on so much, things that people have brought, and it's kind of a recognition and an appreciation, uh, that yes, what you do also matters, and I think that is important for people. We can't really go around and recognize every single person and every culture and every individual in society. I suppose we can do on a one-to-one basis, but as a group, it's nigh on impossible to do. However, there are major, diverse groups in the UK, and that do have make a big difference to economically, socially, creatively, and even if we look at, the NHS, for example, there is, a significant proportion of people that do, go into, medicine, pharmaceuticals from South Asian heritage. Some of them didn't want to, but their parents decided that that was the right job for them to do when they were young, and then have now come to love what they do. Uh, Culturally, when I was young, your parents would say, if you were from a South Asian background, they would say, right, okay, the job for you is either you're going to be a dentist, a doctor, or a solicitor. And that was your choice. Choose one. Which one are you going to be? And now work towards it. Things thankfully have changed now, where people, can do whatever they want, and some of that mindset has changed. But in reality, some of that mindset has given an opportunity for a lot of people from the South Asian background to go into, um, wonderful jobs in the NHS, because I don't, being coming from a background of education and being a governmental driven organization, I know working for places like the NHS and education and those sorts of organizations isn't really a job. It's a vocation, and it's something that you have to love, and it's something that you have to give a lot more time to. It's not you don't clock on and clock off, and you don't say, right, okay, I'm sorry, it's 5 o'clock, I'm leaving now, my job is finished. You will receive calls late at night. You will receive emails. And most of the people that work for organizations like these just respond and give above and beyond, because they love the work that they do, and they don't recognize it as work. They recognize it as, an important element of society, an important element of life, an important element of how we, um, how we live and how we work together, and how we function, to be honest. So in that sense, I'm glad that there are, uh, a diverse range of people that really do understand different communities and different backgrounds. um, and the same with education. I'm grateful that there is a real diversity now. When I was, in primary school, in infant school, actually, in the UK, and growing up, I remember a time when I was being taught how to use a knife and fork. So I come from a Muslim faith, and, so religiously, I've been told that I must eat with my right hand. And when I was in the dining room, in the infant school, and I was eating, I very clearly remember that I was using the fork in my right hand, and every time I'd get my wrist slapped by the, as we used to call them then, dinner ladies. I used to get my wrist slapped and say, no, no, you must hold the fork in your left hand and the knife in the right hand. And it's not their fault. It's because there was a lack of cultural understanding, and because there was that lack of cultural understanding from their point of view, they were trying to teach me the correct method of using a knife and fork. However, what what's happened to me now is I cannot use a fork in my right hand and a knife in the left hand now, when I'm eating. So I still eat with my knife and fork in what is perceived to be the correct way. But things have changed and things have moved on, and that's why events such as South Asian Heritage Month or Black History Month or other events like that, or other calendar marked moments, they are important, because when we're talking about integration, when we're talking about understanding each other, it is through events like this that we um, attend, and we understand and we recognize where somebody is coming from, and then it creates a better relationship between people. So to give you another example, whilst we were doing the South Asian Heritage Month, I was training some volunteers, and I was explaining to them that you might be speaking to someone and they might not look you in the eye, and you might think that they're being very, very rude. But actually, from a South Asian heritage point of view, that's a sign of respect, because especially if you are an older person and they are younger, they won't look you in the face, they'll lower their gaze, and that's a symbol of respect towards you. It's not not something where somebody's uh, just ignoring you or not listening to you. So again, these sorts of things are really important. um, so we have done 100 events. They've ranged from literature, art, um, craft items, theatre, dance, drama, music, um, comedy, stand-up comedy, open mic nights, uh, lots of genres of different sort of music, speeches, talks from various people from around the world, uh, writing poetry, music, of course, and lots of different things. In fact, we've covered sort of every single element that we thought we could, and people have really enjoyed it. And bringing that diverse element of South Asian heritage and what people bring, I think it's been really positive for the local community, but also for those people that have come from far and wide to attend and to deliver elements of the festival. But I think locally people have recognized that there is a lot there that is similar, uh, that we have things that are common amongst us as well. And the differences are not that far, actually. And those differences are things that should be celebrated and things that we can learn from each other as well. I'll just stop here because I don't want to really ramble on and on, uh, because I want to really respond to things that you're interested in and things that you want to ask, and maybe questions that you have, or if you want to ask my opinion on any of the thing. Not that my opinion matters that much, but things that you may be interested in. I rather ensure that you get a little bit of that, really. So are there any questions that anybody wants to ask at this point?
Thank you, Qaisar. I'll just just a quick one. I was lovely to hear about the experiences, and I know the sessions have been really great, because from what I've heard from people, I was just wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about, what you've shared with me before, the sort of the experience of education, and some of the things that were like pitfalls as you were going through. I know the library incidences you've told me about, but I'm sure there are other things as well which had a direct impact, as it were, in terms of I suppose they're looking at the bigger picture and making sure where you're going now, as it were. Sorry, Jackie, did you have something as well?
No, it's all right. Kuldip, you go ahead. I thought I'd do the right. I put my hand up, you see. Very right.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
my
apologies.
questions are all about Huddersfield, and
right, okay.
I'm from Brighouse, you see, so I won't ask any of those, but that's fine.
It's all right. We'll talk about that later, Jackie, because I live in Huddersfield as well. So,
so you go ahead.
Sorry.
Thank you, Kuldeep. Yes, I I wasn't a bright student, to be honest. Uh, I had to work really, really hard. One of my younger brothers is practically a genius in comparison to me. He can look at something and memorize it in his mind, and it'll remain there forever. I had to work really, really, really hard. And when I went to school, I was behind in many things. And when I went to secondary school, uh, I, although I'd lived here more or less for almost all of my life, I was put into classes that were giving me English as a second language sort of experiences, although my actual almost first language was English. Um, but they felt that my grammar wasn't correct, and those sorts of things. And I think really those were the times when people didn't really understand, teachers didn't understand the backgrounds of pupils and students. I'm the eldest, and so therefore, when I was at school, I used to come back and help my brothers with their homework, and I was the one that used to go to the parents' evenings because my parents didn't speak English very fluently. I would go to the hospital appointments with my parents or to the doctor's surgeries to ensure that they understood what was going on. And I was maybe 10 years old, so I had to grow up pretty fast uh, to help and support my parents. But I had aspirations. I wanted to do something, and I worked hard at school. And when it came to my careers uh, interview, uh, they said to me, "What do you want to do?" And I'd just watched a film called Top Gun, and I said, "Oh, I want to join the Air Force. I want to be a fighter pilot, you know." And actually, I always wanted to be a pilot of some sort for, excuse me, because I love traveling, and I thought, oh, if I can fly a plane, I'll be able to go anywhere, that sort of thing. And they said to me, "Oh no, that's not going to happen, really. We don't think you're going to be capable of that." So they asked me for something else. And I said, "I want to be a parapsychologist." And the first thing that they asked me was, "What is that?" And so I had to explain what a parapsychologist is. And then they researched it and they said, "Well, there's only one university in the UK that does that, and that's Edinburgh. And we don't really think you're going to get into that." So parapsychologist is a study of the supernatural, is like ghost hunters and that sort of thing, where you go and find out. But I used to watch lots of horror films and that sort of thing, and I thought, oh, that'll be really interesting. So anyway, thankfully they took me off that sort of path as well. And I left. I left school with very few GCSEs. I think I was the first group of students that did GCSEs. So I blame my teachers because I don't think they knew what they were doing. And we certainly didn't know what we were doing. And I left with two GCSEs and I thought, oh God, what can I do? So I came home and I lied to my parents. And I said, yes, I've got five GCSEs, grade C or above. And they went, right, okay. And I doctored the certificates to prove to them that I had these five GCSEs. Because I didn't want them to be disappointed because they'd pushed me into education so much. Now I had to find a college that would accept me with these two GCSEs to do A levels. Well, I couldn't do A levels because I didn't really have the GCSEs. Anyway, I went to a college. I found a college. It was called Huddersfield Technical College at that time. And I got there and I remember begging and begging and pleading this admissions person to let me do just one A level with these two GCSEs. And I had to go back for 2 days and literally sit there and beg for 3 hours at a time. And they must have taken pity on me, to be honest, because they said, yeah, okay, we'll let you do one A level. And if you're okay, after the first year, we'll let you add another one on, and you can do one, fast track one. But at the same time, you're going to have to do some evening classes and do some more GCSEs. So I said, that's great, I'll do that. So I started these A levels, and they were the wrong ones for me to do. Uh, I did A-level law, and I did A-level economics. And I think the law one was because I thought my parents kept on saying, "Oh, you know, you need to be a solicitor or a doctor or something," and I thought, "Oh, I better be one of those things." And the economics one was really because I saw this beautiful young lady take on the class, and I thought, "Oh, she's pretty. I'm going to join the same course as her because I might get to talk to her." So that both of those choices were absolutely terrible. Um, so I started the A levels, and obviously I didn't do particularly well in those. But however, I managed to get the GCSEs. I managed to work through the GCSEs. So I got terrible grades at the A levels and passed the GCSEs. And I thought, right, okay, now I'm stuck again. What am I going to do? Because my next step is university, and my parents are expecting me to go to university. What am I going to do here? So I found this course in Leeds, and it was called an access course, and it would take you it would take you on to give you access to university without the grades. So I went there, and I met this lovely man called Peter Pillay, and he was from Ghana, from Africa, and he had a really strong Ghanaian accent, and really wanted people, ethnic minorities, to succeed and go to university. That was kind of his mission in life. And thankfully, thank goodness, I met this chap, because he recognized how I was struggling, and he recognized that I did work hard, but I was finding it difficult. And he said, yes, Kessa, come along, join this course. So I said to my parents, I've been selected to do this really special course, um, so that I can do this wonderful degree at university. And they were really proud of me, that I joined an access course. So I went on and joined this access course, and it was called the Access to Education. And the end result of that course was that you would go into university to become a teacher. So it was nothing that I really thought about. It's nothing that I wanted to do. It never occurred to me. I never thought this is what I really want to do. I really just had no choice, and that's I was grabbing and clutching at straws, really. So I went for it, and I did really well there. I got really top grades, and then I managed to get into the University of Bradford. And my parents were kind of a little bit overprotective, so they didn't want me to go too far away. And I thought, right, Bradford's fine. So I went there, but I did agree with them that I was going to stay in the halls, the student halls, because I didn't want to come back every single day, and I wanted some freedom as well. So I got to the university, and I started a Bachelor of Education with honours, and really enjoyed it. Absolutely loved the experience. Uh, Loved the fact that I was becoming a teacher, and accidentally found sort of the thing that I really was suited to, and really enjoyed and really loved. And I suppose I wasn't that thick, because I've got 2 master's degrees, and and I had to do another degree to be a qualified head teacher. So I've got 4 different degrees now. So I couldn't have been that bad, in sort of learning. But maybe it just took me longer to get there, and maybe and somebody to give me a chance. And this chap Peter Pelle, he gave me a chance and an opportunity, and then I excelled in that, and that was really the educational journey, Kuldeep. You know.
Thank you, Kessa. Natasha, Jackie, is that a legacy hand or is that her?
No, yeah. Can I ask a question?
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
Yeah. No, it's not about Brighouse or Huddersfield or radio stations, although I've got a list of questions about those, so I might come back to you at a different time. My son's just started a radio show, which is awful. But apart from that, I might come back for some top tips as to he got up to 10 listeners last week.
Right.
So not quite your level, but he was really impressed. But sorry, no, serious question. I was wondering, this might be a bit deep, but how do you think your experience of being a British South Asian has changed over the last 20 years, say, or do you still find the same obstacles, attitudes that you did when you first came here, and when you described that educational journey? Do you think things have improved? You can be honest, it's a safe space, but do you think things have improved? And I'm also aware that we're all sitting here in Gateshead, which, you know, is not an ethnically diverse area like West Yorkshire is. So it's quite a different experience, I think, for people of any BAME background. So I was just wondering, Qaisar, if you think that the attitudes have improved, or whether you still come up against similar obstacles that you used to do. Is that a bit of a heavy question?
No, Jackie, it's not. It's not. I'm just trying to think of how to respond. My ex-wife is English, and she's as blonde as you can get from hair color. Not she's from a mind point of view, she's absolutely phenomenal. You know, we met at university, and she got a first class honors, whereas I got upper second class honors, and she always dug me for that. And I said, "But I helped you write your dissertation. That's why." So I think, yes, I have heard and I have come across people that have said certain things, and it's made me wonder, have things changed or not, really? I'll give you an example. I was speaking to a nurse, because we engage in a lot of health discussions and debates, and there was this stereotypical thing that she said, and it took me aback a little bit, and it was about childbirth. And she was just genuinely talking, and we were having a genuine conversation about experiences of hospital. And she said to me, females of she was talking about Asian females, but she categorized most females of color into this. She goes, during childbirth are very, very noisy, you know, and yet white females are not. And that made me stop for a second, and I went, okay, is she making a racist comment here, or is she actually genuinely talking about an experience? Obviously, I've not been there, so I wouldn't know, really. But I had heard this previously in other conversations, and then I'd seen it in a few old sitcom TV sessions, and it reminded me of those points. And I thought to myself, right, is this real, or is this just an experience that she's had just on the odd occasion, or what is it? And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about, how do Asian people operate, because that's the only experience I can talk from. So when somebody's passed away, so because my ex-wife now is English, I knew there was a difference. Sometimes it's a personal difference, and sometimes it's a cultural difference. So in an Asian family, when somebody dies, all the kids are involved. Everybody's there. Nobody's shielded from everything. There's lots of crying and wailing, and it's loud, and it's like, let's get it out of your system, and it's all hugging, and it's everybody's, just expressing their sadness, but in a really loud way, and supporting each other. And if somebody's crying, they'll go ahead and cry with them. They won't hold their tears back, and children will sit there and they'll experience all of this. I have two daughters, obviously of mixed heritage, and when one or two people passed away in my family, my ex-wife Louise, she goes, "Oh no, we shouldn't let Aisha go, because she'll have nightmares and it won't be nice for her," and that sort of thing. And I was saying, no, let her go and see the dead body, because only then she'll know, and she'll understand, and she'll be fine about it. Because just like in the olden days, when you had to wake in an open coffin in your living room or whatever it was, it's a bit like that. There is an open coffin where people can say and pay their respects, and that sort of thing. So maybe maybe as Asian people we're louder because not because we're loud, but because that's how we kind of emotionally express things. I don't know if it's true with the childbirth thing. Maybe somebody from your group can tell me.
I was wondering if we had any midwives on the call, but I don't think we have. We'll have to find that out if that's a thing. I can assure you that I wasn't very quiet and reserved when giving. That's coming from my experience, but don't know.
Neither was Louise, and I was there.
Yeah.
So,
can I just interject there? It's really quite interesting, Qaisar, in terms of what you said about that, and having been in the field that I operate in, Jackie, for so long, I can actually hear what you're saying, Qaisar, because to a large degree, working in one of the hospitals, we had similar issues. It was like, if there is a death, we get too many people turning up. Why do you need so many people there? Surely you just need the most immediate family and that's it. I mean, obviously with COVID situation, it's so difficult, but different. But before that, so the sentiments of what you're saying, Qaisar, in terms of it's a family issue, extended family issue, irrespective whether you know them or you don't. And I've just done a little bit of a blog on for South Asian Heritage Month as well. And one of the references in that is about this thing where we as we were growing up, we never called anybody by their name. Not only did you look down, but they were all aunties and uncles, irrespective of who they were. And I think this collective consciousness, as it were, continues. So when we have a death, everybody is there and is expressing. And yes, it is loud. And I've experienced both sides as well. And it's interesting because the other side is very, very quiet and it's sober as opposed to and in terms of the thing about what you asked about the childbirth, and in Bradford, when I was working in Airedale, we had an issue where we had midwives getting really uptight with the Asian community because they had these professional, but not qualified professional, but professional in terms of helping the mother go through childbirth. They called them dyes. And it was like, how dare you come in and try and manipulate this, person who's pregnant and is about to give birth and say, oh, the child is in the right position. No, it isn't. We need to do the following. You need to go into, the into our hospital, and we'll do that rather than have somebody. And that in itself causes a bit of a sort of the confusion in terms of the message he was trying to get out, and also about full engagement. And yes, they used to say the same thing, that for some reason, our Asian, they used to call them our Asian women that come in, tend to speak rather, or tend to shout more than their white counterparts. I don't know if there's a PhD in there somewhere or the other, but something we can think about.
That's right, and now, as you've just referred to, called the dyes, which is almost a name. It just means mother, really. Another female that comes and helps. Well, you do have that scenario now, don't you? Where you do have people that professionally do that as a job. They go in with a female and help out. With regards to childbirth, or ensure that somebody is calm, and with somebody that maybe they're confident with as well. So yeah, it is interesting. But I do think some of those thoughts and attitudes probably still do exist. Maybe they've lessened. Maybe people have understood more about how different cultures operate. There's no right or wrong here, really. It's just that culturally people are different. So for example, in Britain, we've got traditionally boys are dressed in blue and girls in pink. That's a very traditional thing, although I know things have changed now. But you'll find in India boys dressed in pink. It's normal there. So culturally, colors mean different things, words mean different things. How you express yourself is very, very different. Natasha, you have your hand up as well.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for bringing us in there. And also thank you for sharing your stories. They're just fantastic, and I find it really just interesting to listen to them. But I was just wondering, sort of kind of based upon kind of the experiences of education that you've described, you know, working hard, finding it quite difficult, the Saturdays that you spent in the library, or sort of the way that sort of the dinner ladies treated you in terms of teaching you the proper way to use your knife and fork and all those things that you've described. Sort of kind of from those experiences, what have you then taken forward in terms of your career and how you've approached sort of teaching and just kind of the way that you go about sort of life generally? I'm just a bit interested in that.
I've been fortunate enough that I've traveled to many countries, and some countries that people maybe wouldn't travel to, um, uh, and that's given me a real knowledge of different cultures and how people behave, uh, and I've learned a lot from that. And I've come back really, and in education, when I do talk to teachers about different cultures and ethnicities and minority groups and expectations and behaviors, I do say that sometimes it's not directed towards you. It's not personal. It's just how what the expected behavior is of that person from the culture that they come from. I suppose my experiences are not dissimilar to anybody that comes from a poorer community. You know, where there is deprivation, there are certain where there is indicators, there are certain things that are common no matter what ethnicity you are, really. So there is this commonality, and I suppose some of it was poverty and living in a deprived area. Some of it was cultural, and some of it was experiences, and some of it was because I didn't have anybody else that was guiding me, because I became my own guide and then became the guider to my siblings, really. So I have come across children who are white, who don't know how to use a knife and fork properly. I'm going to bring you in a minute, Joanne, but I'm going to just let you know about this experience. I was called in an emergency to a school in Leeds to close it down. In fact, I get called in to close many schools. I'm called the axeman in the education field, because if I've arrived, they think we've had it. It's not always the case, but in sometimes it is. I've got this niche now where I get called, where central government calls me in and says, "Can you just go in and close this school down for us in a nice way?" Anyway, when children get taken out of schools because of their behaviour, they get sent to pupil referral units called PRUs for a certain time to kind of give the teachers and the school a break, but also to give more one-to-one support to these young people, and then send them back to school. However, when they get thrown out of the PRU, they get sent to another school. So I got called into this other school to become the head teacher, to sort the school out and to help the children. Um, it only had 100 children in it. To be honest, that was too many as well, because they could not cope with the 100 children. All you had was chairs flying around, tables had to be bolted to the floors. There was on-site glass repair people, because the windows got smashed daily. It was an absolute nightmare. I walked in. I walked into the school, and I walked straight into the dining room. This was my day one, sort of minute 5. I walked into the dining room and it was lunchtime. And the first thing that happened was a chair came flying towards me, and somebody said, "Oi, you Packy, you're not our head teacher." That was the first sentence and the first experience of that school. And, I recognized and I realized that what these children were lacking was love. They really didn't have anybody that told them that they cared about them. Nothing, nobody. And I sat them down one at a time, and I thought, right, I'm going to sort these kids out one at a time because I can't take this group on. So I'll build a relationship one at a time. So I did it, one at a time. I had a 10-minute meeting with bodyguards and all sorts of things and searches for knives and all sorts, And the school did shut down because it was in the process of shutting down, and I was kind of there to manage it. And I was there for 1 year. And, it really saddens me and moves me. My first experience was a racist remark and a chair being thrown at me. My last day of that school, I had every single kid from that school hug me and cry and say, "We're going to miss you so much. Can't you remain?" 'Cause these kids were human beings. And I took them to a prom, and I hired limousines for them on their final day. And I took them to a prom to a really posh 5-star hotel. And they says to me, "Mr. Mahmood, they're never going to let us in there. We're too rough for them." And I said, "No, you'll be fine." I bought every single one of them a prom dress and a tuxedo. And I taught them how to dance. And 5 of my sessions was the etiquette of eating. So in the dining room, I said, "You'll have 4 or 5 knives and forks, and you're gonna get confused. Right, let's have this. Now, this is how you're going to use your knives and forks and how you're going to eat from the outside inside. You're going to have a 5-course meal. This is what's going to happen. I want you to sit up, sit straight. This is what you need to do. These people will be looking at you, and you need to show them that you are worth this, And one child wanted to go in a sports car. So and the attendance of this school was poor. So I said to them, "Right, okay, if your attendance improves, and the child who makes the most progress in attendance, not the top attendance, but the most progress in attendance, I'm going to hire in this Lamborghini, and I will personally chauffeur them to this hotel." And this young lad from a place in Beeston in Leeds won. And I hired this Lamborghini. I paid for this myself. It was painful, but I paid for it myself because I thought the school wouldn't pay for it. I thought, right, okay, I've said this, so I'm going to do this for these kids. I paid for it. I hired it, and I took it to the street. And honest to God, I kid you not, his grandparents had travelled from Norfolk just to see him get into this car. And the whole street was out looking at him in his tuxedo, getting into this car, being chauffeured by his head teacher. And they just clapped for him. And he got to this hotel, and he was amazed. And the girls just loved it because they'd never been in a prom dress, and it was because they did not have the care and the love from home, and they came from families where there was drug abuse, substance abuse, sexual abuse, and those sorts of things. So I think these experiences that children have are not necessarily because of race. It's more to do with deprivation, I think, and more to do with experiences that they have in life. Joanne, you had your hand raised.
How do I come back and top that story? I was just wanting to basically reflect on how lucky I had been in the past. I've had the experience of lots of different cultures, religions, etc., and have mixed heritage in my family. My brother-in-law is Muslim, my cousins are Muslim, and had the pleasure to work with a nurse who was Hindu, whose family invited me around to experience eating with them, and had a big family celebration, which I thought was fantastic. And as part of me training in the past, I also went and visited the Sikh temple in Sunderland, and learned that if I was ever hungry, that's where I would need to go.
Absolutely.
And absolutely learned about the dagger and all of that. So found it extremely rich in learning all about these different cultures. And again, like you, I've had the opportunity to travel to other countries to learn about their cultures as well. So I think the question I wanted to ask is, because I haven't learned any of this from my education, and I'm old now, so things might have changed. So I'm just wondering what your view is whether or not you feel that the education is right in schools at the moment around not just understanding other people's cultures, going back to the dinner lady scenario, but an appreciation of them and what they actually bring to the wider British culture. Do you think we've got that right in schools at the moment?
Thanks, Joanne, for the question. Schools are under phenomenal pressure, as I know the NHS is, because we're all target driven. And really the targets keep on moving because you reach them and the goalpost shifts all of a sudden. The driver in schools is very, very traditional: English, maths, science, those sorts of things. But what loses out is the other things that actually make us human beings. Usually it's the arts, the music, the drama, the sports, the physical education, those sorts of things that children and young people actually enjoy, or they're going out on residential trips where they learn things. But now the risk assessments are so tedious, so much that people say, well, I'd rather just not do it. School should be an enjoyable place. It's where you spend a significant part of your life and a significant part of your day. And children should look forward to going to school, and not just because they're going to see their friends, but for the love of learning, for the love and enjoyment of things that they really want to do. And I think a lot of children struggle because the curriculum is forced upon them. Now, some of it you have to know, because it's important to know that 2 + 2 equals 4, but not at the cost of what makes us human beings. I had the experience of, excuse me, going to the Bronx in New York and supporting a school there, and it was very, very different. So this was what's called a free school. So 25 people and me went out to America to research the free school movement, because we were writing the policy document for government on free schools in the UK. So the 2010 white paper for education, the first 4 or 5 pages have been penned by me and my team. And that's where the academies and the free schools came into the UK. The government looked at some of that. Well, not the academies, but the free schools came in through that paper. So the government looked at some of that and then brought the free schools into the UK, that sort of model, although it wasn't exactly as we had recommended. And I went there, and it was a really different experience in the Bronx. One of those big yellow buses stopped, them school buses that you see in Nightmare on Elm Street or whatever. And the kids ran from the street to the school, literally ran. And I thought, wow, these kids must love school. And the guy stood next to me and said, no, they're afraid of being shot. They're getting into school before something terrible happens to them. That's why they're running into school, because it's safer in there than it is out here. But the experience inside school was really, really different for them. Almost cultish, a bit bizarre and weird, very different from a British experience. So my first day at that school, I went to the school, and assembly was being formed, and all the children were stood in a circle, about 500 children. And there was a lady stood in the middle of of the circle, and a child stood there, and the principal was stood to one side, and this child was saying what was his mother, I found out afterwards, was apologizing to his mother for using profanity in the house, which she objected to, and she reported that to the school. He had to come to school the next day in front of all his peers, apologize to his mother for being rude at home. And all the other children had to say whether they forgave him for that or not. And if they didn't, he got a detention from school for his behavior at home. And if they did, he was okay. Now, I found that really bizarre, because I thought, this is a bit extreme. This is a bit like a cult. This is really terrible for that child. And, why are they doing this? But all these children were in on it. They said, yeah, this is what we do because this is the right way forward. Our school and our home is connected. We are one. And they had this real strong connection between the home and the school. And whatever happens in the home is reported to the school, and whatever happens in the school is reported to the home. And there was a real connection between these parents and this school, and how they operated. But what it showed was collective responsibility for behavior, and that was really, really different. Now, we wrote in our in our report that we had experienced this. Well, we said we're not recommending it, but this was an experience. But I do know one school in Bradford that actually does this now, and it's one, and it's in a very deprived area of Bradford, and it's one of the highest performing schools in Bradford, and it wasn't 4 years ago. And the chap that runs it was with me in New York on this fact-finding expedition. So, so it's different. Anything else? Does that answer the question? Sorry.
You've basically stunned everybody there, Qaisar, you know, with this yellow bus and they're running into school.
Yeah.
I was if anybody hasn't got anything, I like to ask a question, which is I just wondered, within sort of the journey that you've talked about and are still sort of continuing with, how do we ensure that we get our BME children to start to refocus, rethink about jobs within the NHS? And I'm not necessarily talking just about families saying, well, you become a doctor or become a nurse or whatever, but you know, how do we try and make sure that we capture them early on to sort of say, look, there is alternatives as well as just being, other than being just a clinician?
I think the NHS has a lot of respect. Excuse me, in all societies. Within the Asian society, it has real, respect as something that people look up to, and naturally, people will still want to come into the NHS, but they still do think, those jobs as doctors, nurses, surgeons are the ones to go for. But however, the NHS just doesn't run on those people. You need administrators, you need people in the back office, you need people supporting you, porters, you need consultants, you need guiders, you need all sorts of people there. I think for young people, really, they may not know of all the opportunities that there are to work in the NHS. From my experience in schools, when you talk about the NHS, you talk about being a nurse or a doctor, and that's about it, to be honest. You don't really talk about, well, you can be all of these sorts of things. It's actually the same for the police as well. when careers talks about joining the police, they never talk about the back office bit of the police. They never talk about those bits of the jobs that ensure that the police is effective and working. They just say, do you want to join the police in like being a bobby on the beat, being a police officer? So really, I think we need to engage with and the career services have been decimated mostly, and they don't really exist as they did. Although they are starting again, they're starting again in different ways. But I think in schools, we need to kind of educate people and let them know that of all the hundreds of different roles that exist in the NHS, in the police, in other departments as well. But we're talking about the NHS here, I suppose. So engaging with schools, letting them know, giving them some information, maybe even directing them to a website, saying, look at all these roles and responsibilities that there are that people can look at. Maybe even doing some talks in schools. Although I know that is, from a point of view of people, it's expensive and takes a lot of time. But I suppose getting the information there somehow is important.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that anybody ask, or is there anything that you think I've missed? I mean, I'm just talking about my experiences. Really, they're not necessarily the experience of every single Asian person around, but that's just me. Some of them will be similar, and some of them won't be.
No, I wanted to say thank you, Qaisar. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. Actually, as I said, not so much around the Heritage Month, South I can't say that, South Asian Heritage Month, but more about your personal experience has been really fascinating, actually. Just wondering if you're going to go back into education or whether you're going to stay as a...
Sometimes when you leave something, you become so far removed from it that it becomes difficult. But the system continues to move on. I still do dabble a little bit, and I do still get caught for doing some consultancy work up and down the country and internationally. And I do take the opportunity to do so because actually, you know, work in the NHS and work in schools is actually, it's really tiring. It's exhausting work, to be honest. And, you know, when you take a step out of it, you just go, oh, sigh of relief, and you think, yes, I can relax a little bit. But it's gripped you, it's holding you. And as soon as you put your foot back in, you think, yeah, actually, this is where I really want to be, no matter how tiring it is. It's got this bewitching power, you know, where no matter how much you want to leave, it keeps you there, it holds you, and no matter how tiring it is, and how much you complain about it, and how much you hate it at times, you still want to be there, really. You know,
I think that resonates around everybody who's probably listened to you this lunchtime, if I'm honest, given where we are.
Yeah. Kuldeep, you got your hand raised.
I was just going to say that in terms of the session with you, Qaisar, I think in a way the South Asian heritage side of things is something that's for us is just part and parcel of who we are, the makeup of who we are. And I suppose one of the things, it happens nearly all of the things we do this, where we take a month to celebrate, and it's about, and the focus then becomes just that month at times. And maybe one of the things is about how we take the notions of South Asian heritage across into our everyday thinking and work, and you know, it just becomes an integral part of what we're doing, rather than, or when we're now coming up to this, so let's think about how we're going to celebrate. And I'm speaking personally, I think it's about how we take it forward in the next stages. And I know that Kes has not alluded to it as much, but I know that I saw the 100 odd things that were on the stuff that was going to be done, and unfortunately I couldn't take part in lots of them for a variety of reasons. But I think the beauty of one of the things of this is that it wasn't just aimed at the Asian community, but it was aimed at the community as a whole. And I think in terms of how we do something within our trust, it's the same thing. You know, we share it from personal perspectives, but it's about learning and educating from each other and continuously evolving, rather than saying, well, we've done that bit now, so we've learned it. Because as soon as tomorrow comes, something else will come into the pot, and we'll have, you know, things will have moved on in our understanding around whatever it is that we've thought about and engaged with. So I just wanted to say thank you to Qaisar for giving us his time.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I think you're right, Kuldeep. Just like we have Pride Month and the rainbow colours go up, just like we have Black History Month, and now relatively recently South Asian Heritage Month. Probably these are moments in the calendar to remind us, but the reality is that if we continuously just think about everybody and needs, then, you know, these little blips in the calendar are just little reminders, really, of what's going on and celebrations. But we do all the things we do throughout the year. Probably the worst thing to do is to have a policy document and just write it in that we will do this and we will do this and we will do this, and just put it away. Because believe me, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, policy documents are really the worst sort of thing because they're a guide. And sometimes they're written for other people rather than ourselves. And they exist to prove something. But really, if we did what we should do, then we don't really need to write the policies because we're already doing it. You know. Well, thank you very much for letting me come on and speak to all of you and taking up of your time as well. So, you know, thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's been brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care of yourself.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.